Welcome to Politics Done Right on Egberto Off the Record on Substack. This is an important piece that just couldn't wait until tomorrow morning. Speaker Johnson was interviewed by Jake Tapper about the one big beautiful bill. And of course, that one big beautiful bill, as they would have you believe, it's great for the economy. It's not going to blow the budget as everybody knows it's going to blow the budget. It's not really going to transfer the wealth of middle-class Americans to the top. It's really just to get the waste and abuse out of the system. That is how they're characterizing this bill. Well, initially, when Jake Tapper started the interview, one would sort of believe that maybe he's going to really push the speaker to talk about what this bill is really going to do. So what I'm going to do is play you what I consider the representative segment of that interview. I'm going to play you the representative segment of that interview, and then we'll go ahead and dissect why this type of interview allows this bill to be pushed through and gives cover to the evil the bill actually represents. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Debt.
The number one threat to our nation right now is our debt. We take that very seriously. Congress has kicked the can down the road for decades, and we're out of road. And so we understand that it's our responsibility to fix this.
So there are 5 different independent scores of this legislation. Every one of them says that it will increase the deficit somewhere between $3.3 and $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, I get you take issue with the Congressional Budget Office and that they don't have dynamic scoring, all this. But this is the emerging consensus among everyone analyzing. They say not only are you kicking the can down the road, but you're making the problem worse. You're adding to the debt.
Well, I think that is dramatically overstated, and here's why. Those same groups can objectively see and acknowledge that this is the largest cut in spending in at least 30 years and arguably of all time. We're cutting over $1.5 trillion in federal spending while we check all the boxes and bring about a pro-growth economy. And the CBO has been panned because, as you said, they don't do dynamic scoring. What that means is they don't account for the growth that will be fostered by all the policies that are in this big piece of legislation. This is not theoretical, Jake. Just remember the last Trump administration. After the first 2 years, we brought about the greatest economy in the history of the world, not just the U.S. The growth was off the charts. It was an average of about 3% of growth in GDP. Why? Because we cut taxes and we cut regulations. We're doing the same thing this time around, but on steroids. This is a much larger package, a much more robust package with all these features that will really get the economy going because wages will rise, job creators, entrepreneurs, risk takers will have more ability to expand their businesses. U.S. manufacturing onshore is being incentivized. All these things will work together to make the economy grow faster than many of these projections are putting forth. So we're not buying it. We'll see what happens, and we have the evidence to prove it from the past.
So the CBO doesn't get a vote, but my next guest, Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, does. And he wrote in the Wall Street Journal, quote, "The one big beautiful bill will almost certainly add to our deficits and debt." And he even called the bill the Titanic. What do you say to him?
Look, I love Ron Johnson. He's a dear friend, and he and I agree on our philosophy. We're limited government conservatives. We want to limit the size and scope of the government and make it work more efficiently and effectively. My response to him, and we've spoken about this over recent months, is that we're doing the best we can with the vote numbers that we have. In other words, we've got to turn this aircraft carrier. You don't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes a mile of open ocean to do it. And it took us decades to get in this financial situation. We can't just flip a switch and get out of it overnight. One of the people that my friend Ron Johnson really respects is Russ Vought, who directs the Office of Management and Budget. And Russ is a big champion for this piece of legislation. He calls it historic. And he's a fiscal hawk. And so am I. So we're doing as much as we can. And I just encourage Ron to remember, in the House, we have 220 Republicans, a wide range of perspectives and a wide range of districts represented. And I've got to get to 217 votes to get this thing over the line. So as much as we can in as big increment as we can, I think we've achieved that here. And I just want them to remember that we got to deal within the realm of what's possible.
Now, I want to remind everybody who Russ Vought is. Russ Vought is one of the major authors of Project 2025. And Jake Tapper simply ignored that comment that he made. But before we tackle anything else, I want to tackle what he talks about the Trump economy because, Natalie Lago gets it right when she says imaginary growth, just like a DJT 1.0 White House administration. She hits that on the nail when they talk about the growth that comes with tax cuts. Let's first remember something very important. Jake Tapper gave him a bone when he said, I know you don't listen to the CBO, but what you do is because the CBO don't take into account what's called dynamic scoring. Dynamic scoring is when they take a look at what the economic effects of any legislation have on the economy. Well, they always claim that tax cuts create an effect on the economy, which is positive to grow the economy. The thing about it is we have a whole lot of proof that that's not true. We have Ronald Reagan versus Bill Clinton. Under the Ronald Reagan economy, there were a lot of jobs created after a big recovery. Under Bill Clinton, it multiplied many more jobs than Reagan created. That isn't spoken about because, again, the right wing has a better PR department and the mainstream media doesn't spend a whole lot of time refuting or telling the truth. When we look at Donald Trump's economy proper, says data show Trump didn't build a great economy. He inherited it from whom again? Obama. And if you want to look at the numbers, we can look at them simply. As far as GDP growth, Obama was coming out of a huge downturn in the economy, which took several years to recover. And even with that, in his second term, he had comparable growth rates to Donald Trump. 2.4 for Obama, 2.5 for Donald Trump. But here's the kicker. Under Obama, more jobs were created, 215 per month under Obama versus 182 per month under Donald Trump. And these numbers are pre the pandemic. So you cannot use a pandemic as an excuse. OK, so when we take a look at what actually occurred, if you look at the Dow Jones, of course, Obama had the crash to contend with and come back. Again, comparable numbers up. Change in unemployment rate. Look at the trajectory of the charts. He's just a continuation of the Obama economy. So when they talk about Donald Trump having a great economy, it has just been the continuation of what has occurred. But when it comes to debt, Donald Trump added a hell of a lot of debt for that economy. In other words, his tax cuts created a whole lot of debt. And let me explain a little thing about debt. Debt creates great immediate economies. All right. If I have $10, if the government if I get a $10 tax cut, that's $10 I have that I can spend. And if the government still has to pay that $10 that it pays for healthcare or pay for SNAP or whatever, that $10 still gets paid. So therefore, if I give a $10 tax cut and the government still has to spend the same amount of money, and you have to borrow that money to spend it, that doubles the amount of economic activity. So it is true that spending creates a lot of good within the economy, and tax cuts can actually create more spending in the economy if that tax cut doesn't come with spending cuts. And that's what Reagan used. That's what Trump used to increase his economy, while fiscally responsible Clinton, fiscally responsible Obama, fiscally responsible Biden, they played with both of these numbers to ensure that we just don't go completely out of whack. All these things are in the numbers. The fiscally irresponsible folks are Republicans and what they're doing. Now, how does this match with the big, beautiful bill? First of all, when we look at that dynamic scoring, disregard the dynamic scoring. The economy under the first term of Donald Trump proved that dynamic scoring for tax cut is a hoax. In fact, when you talk about tax cuts versus spending, there's something called the multiplier effect. In other words, if I spend more money, how many times does that dollar circulate in the economy to increase the GDP, the gross domestic product? If I give a tax cut, how much times does that money circulate in the economy to give a tax cut? To create economic activity. The reality, folks, is that spending for things like education, spending for things like healthcare, spending for all these other things are much more multiplicative than tax cuts. And especially because tax cuts go to whom? Wealthier people. Even if everybody got a 2% tax cut, given that our wealth is so skewed towards the top, a 2% tax cut for somebody making $10,000 is only about $200. But a 2% tax cut for somebody making $2 million is over $200,000 in tax cuts, right? So, over $400 million in tax cuts. So let's understand how the system works all together and how this skewing to the top works. Jake Tapper did very little. In fact, he allowed the Speaker of the House, Johnson, to come on your air and lie to you as far as most of these tax cuts or the tax cuts that they're doing are somehow just going to be reflected onto those people who didn't deserve to have SNAP, those people who didn't deserve to have Medicaid. He spoke about able-bodied people working. Well, what happens if you're that able-bodied person taking care of somebody in hospice? What happens if you're an able-bodied person with 3 kids that you can't afford the care for those kids? There are reasons why these laws aren't written to say, well, if you can work, you get no care because you can work and there's a job available for you. If there's a job available for you, but you can't take care of your kids if you have that job, is there a job really available for you? If we had a society like many of the Scandinavian countries that really believe in family values, that really believe that if you are working, you deserve the support to have your kids taken care of if you can't be with them. If you had a humane system that says you deserve health care, whether you make $1,000 or $1 million, then it would make sense. Now, what Jake Tapper did is he allowed Johnson to come on air and spin several lies. One, that the cuts that they're making to Medicaid, that the cuts they're making to SNAP, that the cuts they're making to Meals on Wheels are those cuts that are for people that are undeserving of said aid. That's a lie. When he goes out there and he talks about dynamic scoring for this bill, that's a lie. When he goes out there and talks about the great economy that Donald Trump had, that's a lie. And when he goes ahead and talk about the deficit not being blown out of proportion by this bill, that's a lie. And what Jake Tapper did, he gave him a platform to plant those seeds. And in planting those seeds, there are many who won't see what we're talking about right now that would have taken Mike Johnson's word to satisfy themselves, to make themselves believe that it is okay not to pressure those politicians who are likely to pass this bill. Well, over this weekend, I wrote a piece because I wanted folks to see the urgency in what we're talking about. And I want to go through that article that I wrote. Actually, I wrote it about midnight midnight. Actually, I wrote it about 1:00, just before. It was the last article I wrote before going to bed. Because, I am completely concerned that enough people don't really see the dire straits that we're currently in. And I'm not telling people to be fearful. I'm not telling people to be panicked. I'm telling people to engage. I'm telling people to act. And if you take a look at the article I wrote earlier this morning was, America, this is a 5-alarm fire and we are at DEFCON 5. It is not business as usual. We are in a place we have never been before. At one time, I equated the political fraud we are living through today as just another dose of McCarthyism that, while harmful, would pass one we could easily recover from. But I'm wrong about that. This isn't the past McCarthyism. This is a lot more dangerous. It is not. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, the Republican Congress, neoliberal Democrats, and the mainstream media have yet to understand the danger. Now, all of these people, let me give you the article. I'll put the article in the chat. It's on Substack as well. Many of these people, what's occurring with Donald Trump right now will affect them dearly. And by the way, folks, if anybody wants to also make a call, the telephone number is 281-823-7747. 281-823-7747. As I'm saying now, every one of these different branches of government is in danger from an authoritarian executive. And it is almost like they cannot see it. The Supreme Court and the Republican Congress, for the most part, acquiesce to the corrupt Trump and his administration. And the neoliberal Democrats just blow hot air or follow the let Trump self-destruct advice from an age consultant. What is his name? James Carville. Do nothing. They'll self-destruct. No, they won't. Look at how Tapper handled the speaker with kid gloves. Okay, so no, James Carville have never won the majority of the popular vote. He has never run a majority. Every time Clinton won, he won with under 50%. But that is who many of these neoliberal Democrats decide they are going to follow. You know, I mean, if you want to know somebody who has the pulse of the people, look at the Democrat they make the most caricatured, and that is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You may smile, you may laugh, you may think she's too young, all of that, but she has the pulse of the working class. If that's why they have to ridicule her the way they do. But continuing, we are at DEFCON 5. In nuclear terms and in terms of fire, we are at a 5-alarm fire. A dangerous fire can simmer for a long time until a catalyst comes to fruition. So you have a home and all the windows are closed, all the doors are closed, and there's a simmering fire. The extra carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and compression within that room keeps it subdued. It's just kind of simmering. As soon as that fireman comes in, or fire person comes in, opens that door, an influx of oxygen comes in, ignites all those flammables, and explodes. That is what that bill is. That represents that one big, beautiful bill. It is that simmering fire, just waiting to explode. Waiting to explode is when it is passed by both the Senate and the House. You have to determine if you're going to keep that door shut, which is what we are aiming to do. Keep that door shut so that thing can explode. And why do I just say keep that door shut instead of trying to extinguish the fire? Because a Republican Congress, a Republican Supreme Court, and a Republican president, that's all those of us with sense have the power to do. Prevent the explosion. We're still going to get the bad policies from these guys continuously. We will continue to get these bad policies. So all we have to do is work hard to prevent this bill from doing what's called a backdraft. The Republican one beautiful bill is that simmering thing, and we got to hold it. But here's the deal. Let me point out the dangers of the bill, and this is what I wrote about it. That's all important, folks. Trump's average tariffs are higher than under the Depression-era Smoot-Hawley Act. That's the act that made the Depression even worse. Every American pays that tariff to the U.S. Treasury, which ultimately ends up in the pockets of mostly wealthy Americans. This means the working class has less money and buys fewer products. Given the broad base of the tariffs, this guarantees stagflation with a minimum inflation and recession. This has worldwide implications. First, every country's economy will suffer in the short run. They will reduce their dependence and allegiance to the United States as they recover. That will further erode the employment and buying power of the working class. Second, the big, beautiful bill is written in a deceptively evil manner. And I want you guys to listen to these 5 points of this big, beautiful bill. It is looking at it from 30,000 feet. You have to see it from 30,000 feet. Then you have to see what it's really all about. The insidious, evil manner in which it is done, the way it cuts Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, and all these things. The insidious, evil manner in which it's done shows the conniving extremes Republican would go to fool their MAGA base into supporting it. For example, as opposed to cutting Pell Grants, they make it virtually inaccessible by requiring that a student take 15 hours instead of 12 hours, almost guaranteeing that working students and part-timers need not apply. So you're a part-time student, or you can work full-time or part-time with 12 hours. Forget it. You can't get the Pell Grant because they limit the amount of they say, well, if you can't go 15 hours, forget it. You can't get the Pell Grant. So that's a way they cut the Pell Grants without telling you it's a cut. They just make it inaccessible. Number 2, most people at the low end do not benefit from the tax on tips. They advertise it. Tax and tips, and no tax on overtime. And everybody say, yay, yay, yay. But guess who are the people who can take care of that? The ones who can actually take advantage of that are the higher earning working class, the higher earning middle class, the people that will do fine whether the tax cuts come or not. They will be fine. And those are the ones who can take over or take advantage on no tax on tips or no tax on overtime. You know why? The poor people still are left behind. The poor working class is still left behind because their standard deduction that they were able to take last year, the year before, and always continue to stay the same. And here's the worst. When we look at the top 10% and the bottom 10%, the bottom 10% are not getting a tax cut. They're actually getting a tax increase. They don't tell you that because they bungle it up with the bottom 20%, right? So the bottom 20% got to get a little equally. The lies, the big tapper, all of this that I'm talking about in my little piece here. The time for America to know how this bill would affect them should have come from this independent progressive media person. This should be coming from Jake Tapper. These are the guys that have a full staff to investigate all this stuff. They have a staff that could come out and inform Americans about what the bill actually does. Jake Tapper had him on for 15 minutes. Jake Tapper could not get not one of these questions, important questions, material questions that will affect all of the working class. He didn't get not one of those questions out. Not one. 3, work requirements sound good to receive Medicaid until one realizes that one cannot afford a babysitter or outside care for a loved one, or if you can't get 80 hours in a month, which some people, again, they may live in rural America, not a lot of jobs. So somebody may have a little shop that they want some work in, another little store, a little mechanic shop, and they may ask you to come and work for a few hours that doesn't add up to 80 hours in a month. But you're working, you're doing something productive, but you're not working 80 hours. Cut your Medicaid. These are cuts that they don't have to say it cuts. They just say able-bodied workers. Well, you have to be able to do these things. The reason the bills are not generally written that way is to prevent that guy in Timbuktu, Missouri, who is working. He wants to take care of his family. But this month he fell below 80 hours. He loses his Medicaid. And then another month he works 80 hours, he gets a chance to reapply again, wait through all the paperwork to get health care again. Evil. All of this will make people die. But the Democrats, liberal Democrats, they're not speaking that way. They're not saying if this bill passes, a lot of people would have been murdered by those who passed this bill. You have to speak in graphic manner. Democrats have to go into rural America, go in front of that hospital and say, if this bill passes, this hospital closes. Where are Democrats doing that? Why aren't every Democrat that has a website, why aren't they saying, put in a video up? Everybody wants videos. They're doing TikToks. They're doing Instagram, all these things. All of what you're seeing here, I also place on Instagram, TikTok, and all over to spread the message. But we need a lot of people doing this, right? We need everybody doing this, right? So we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is an expert in getting her message out. Guess what's special about Alexandria? You know the people who voted for her? Guess who also voted for her? There are people who voted for her that were MAGA. They voted for her and Trump at the same time. How does that compute? How does that? And you know what she did? She didn't say, I didn't want those votes. She went and interrogated those people who voted for her and then voted for Trump. She knows how to speak to the working class. We know. Catherine, I'm not talking about Democrats that are hollering. I'm talking about neoliberal Democrats. I am a Democrat. You're speaking to a Democrat. You're speaking to a precinct chair in the Democratic Party. I am a Democrat and I am a precinct chair in the Democratic Party, and I am out there screaming my head off. So my dear, beautiful Catherine Hill, I'm not speaking to Democrats. I'm speaking to neoliberal Democrats who are running the party. That's who I'm speaking to. So I just want to kind of clarify that. So if you got that, please confirm that you understand what I'm saying. If I didn't make myself clear, forgive me. I hope I did make myself clear now. Okay. The other item, most of the green policies Biden passed went to where again? Red states. I repeat, most of the green energy and green job policies went to whom? It went to red states. I could see that as a strategic move by Biden, right? Biden probably said, well, if I make sure that a lot of red states get all these jobs, what does that really mean? That likely means that it stands a better chance of not being cut. When I speak about the evil, about the big, beautiful bill, that's what I'm talking about. These guys don't give a damn about MAGA. These guys don't give a damn about the working class. They don't care about any of that. They want those tax cut benefits at all cost. They want it at all costs. It does not matter who it harms. And that is the message that we have to get to those people. Neoliberal Democrats are the Democrats that are funded almost exclusively by the corporatocracy. These are the guys that prevent policies that really supports working class people. These are guys like, what's her name? Sinema, who prevented healthcare and daycare for your kids. These are people like Joe Manchin, who prevented people from getting. Let me tell you what Joe Manchin said. Let's be clear here. Joe Manchin, a neoliberal Democrat, he is from West Virginia. And Joe Manchin said the following. He does not want to give people, give the working class tax breaks, give the working class health care, give the working class support for children care, etc., because he said they will drink it off. This is Joe Manchin, a Democrat out of West Virginia, either the first or second poorest state in this nation. And Joe Manchin said that these people may drink off any benefits that they get. So that's why give the benefits? And he is the one who helped, along with Sinema, build back better, which had a whole lot of progressive things that we wanted. Biden, a president that I wasn't initially for. Anybody who knows me know that I was a Bernie Sanders delegate. But better than any past Democratic president since Johnson or Roosevelt, he listened to the Progressive Caucus, and he was in fact passing Democratic, or rather Progressive Caucus policies. Not as deep as we would like to, but better than even Obama. And that's what we're talking about here, folks. That's what we're talking about. So we have to get our act together. Last one. Medicaid cuts will ultimately cause many rural hospitals to close, as many patients cannot pay without it. And this is where, Catherine, I speak about Democrats should be out in every rural area right now. We need to get out of Washington. We need to get out of these places where people are already maybe going to vote for us because they know we're on the good side. We need to go. It doesn't matter if people are going to scream at us. It doesn't matter if people are going to say, get out of here. I live in one of the reddest areas in this county. Okay. And it turns out that I go out there and I speak, I convince, I talk to my MAGA brothers and sisters. I talk, I inject, I do all of this. And yes, you don't change most of them, but you change enough of them to put the fear of passing a bill like this in them. But if we really wanted to get things done, again, what Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders were doing, going around red areas and getting big crowds, let me tell you, more than 10% of those crowds that Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez got, those were what again? Republicans. They were Republicans. So it is so important. It is so important. So Bernie is your guy. Great. I think there are a lot of Dems out and about. Yeah, you take a look at what Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez have been doing and getting people out there en masse. And yes, your Catherine Rachel Maddow does a great job of showing all those different protests that are going around. And by the way, I'm with the Indivisible Kingwood here, where we do a whole lot of that, etc. So yes, you're absolutely right. A lot of people are out there, but we need more to go out there. Not only, again, like I said, when I talk about the neoliberal Democrats not doing their job, my dear, what should be done right now is going into all these areas that Republicans dominate, as Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie did, and stand in front of that hospital. We know what hospitals are closing. I presented an article a couple of weeks ago with the CEO of a hospital in rural Colorado that votes Republican, where he came on national TV and said, if this bill passes, my hospital closes. Now think about a delegation of Democrats going in front of that hospital and having and mounting a press conference and saying, if this bill passes, this is how much this hospital will get cut because of the amount of people who will get cut here, and this hospital will close. And you do that with hospitals. You go to daycare centers. You go in front of that daycare center. You don't need permission. You can get on the public sidewalk, and you say, the X amount percentage of these people who are going to this particular daycare center are on assistance. If this bill passes, they will no longer be. You have to do the work. You have to go out there and earn people's vote. One of the reasons we didn't earn people's vote is we thought we could just throw a whole bunch of stuff on TV. We spent $2 billion, or $2 billion to lose an election. Donald Trump spent $1 billion to win an election. And you know what was the difference? In how it was spent. They invested in their bloggers. They invested in their independent media. They invested in their lying media. They invested in the grassroots. They invested in all these things that touched the people the closest. They did it. They went out there. They blew up, even though they're lying and they're evil. They threw up a trans person, and they made that the definition of what democratic policy is. We support trans. We support everybody. But they made it seem like at your expense, they're supporting all these whatevers. We have to get smart, and we have to do the job. But the problem is when too many of you are on the take, or I should say too many of us are on the take, right? We can't go out and say, this corporation has been pilfering us, because you're getting a few dollars from these corporations. So when you're like Ocasio-Cortez, she's the highest grossing fundraiser in the aggregate, and she doesn't do it with corporate dollars. I am saying, if we work with the people that are supporting us, we don't have to have those corporate dollars. If you are supporting your independent media, if you're supporting all these different groups, we don't need to have the corporate media that's running this stuff. Look, it's in our hands, and we have to engage. I could go on and on, but you get the picture. Many will see some poetic justice in that this bill will be a disaster for MAGA's socioeconomic well-being. The problem is that their suffering will be a metastasizing cancer that spreads to all. So We don't get to suffer. MAGA doesn't get to suffer from what Trump's going to do to them in a vacuum. That spreads to all of us. That spreads to all of us. And that is something that needs to be mitigated. The Supreme Court has given Trump a permission slip to act illegally. The Republican Congress allows itself to be puppeteered by the president with little pushback, and neoliberal Democrats have made themselves irrelevant. How do you make yourself relevant? Go to those hospitals that are going to be closing and have press conference and bring people over. You're going to have a lot of MAGA come out and scream at you. That will make the press conference get even more visibility. We have to use our heads. We have to be out there. We just don't need to be out in front. Yes, we have to be out in front of that senator's office as well. We must visit our senators and congresspersons' office virtually, through phone calls, emails, with our persons, with our bodies, written letters, fax, in person, and more. And more. Let them know you are not fooled by the window dressing portion of their bill. Let them know you understand the evil within it and how it will be disastrous to the working place. In other words, we don't want to just go out there and scream. We don't want just go out there and say the bill is not good. We want to be able to tell them why the bill is not good. I enumerated 5 major things in this article, but there are scores more that are bad. But these are some major ones that I enumerated in this article. Most of the articles I'm writing and distributing through Substack, Medium, Daily Kos, and other networks expresses the urgency. Most video shorts on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Telegram, Twitch, and other platforms are flooded. I'm flooding the zone with and trying to express this reality. My 2 politics shows, Politics Done Right daily in the mornings at 6 a.m. Central and at 3 p.m. Central, are deconstructing our current path to demise. Absent an intentional change by all of us, absent all of us engaging, making these people know that we are not just going to take it. That is what prevents this bill from passing. But you have to engage. You have to go out there. We're not scared. We're not frightened. We're not paralyzed by fear. We have to make our presence known. Those of you in a wheelchair sitting back or whatever, tell your story. In fact, I have a call and I'm going to ask this now, and anybody else who pass this on to your friends and people. One of the best ways, and Michael Lewis points this out, this is the author of many docuseries, books, the works. A story is much better than me giving you a whole lot of stats online. If I can tell you a story about how something affects my humanity, how something affects me, it is much more powerful than me just throwing out numbers and facts and all that kind of stuff. If I can show you how it affects me. So what I've been doing and trying to do is get people's own stories. Tell it to me in 5 minutes. Tell it to me in 2 minutes. Tell it to me in 3 minutes. What I want to do going forward is, if you know somebody with a story to tell, somebody that wants something that they know they're going to lose with this budget, or they know they're losing for some kind of care that should be there that isn't there, give them our info@politicsdoneright.com. Let them email us and let us do either a video interview with them, an audio interview, or just tell us their story so that we can further promote this story and let people know that many are suffering in silence. Most people in America suffer in silence. So we don't get a chance to understand much of what's happening, how people are affected. A lot of people are sitting down there thinking, I am the only one that's going through this. I'm ashamed for what I'm going through, which isn't the case. There's nothing to be ashamed of in this country. That the people that are ripping you off are corporations. The people that should be ashamed are the billionaires who are making all their income off of your backs. Don't let anybody fool you. If you're working, if you're out there doing something, those billionaires are making a profit on your back. Nothing to be ashamed of. But we suffer in silence. And because we suffer in silence, these evil animals calling themselves politicians get a chance to push through these things that affect even more evil pain on you. We have to get over that. We have to get over that. So I'm asking you right now, folks, first of all, I hope a lot of what I am speaking about here, Margaret Ryan says, I joined rural outreach in the visible group going to red districts to help them discover why this bill will hurt their small city. Thank you, Margaret Ryan, for what you're doing there. Very important. Very important. Catherine says, stop the Senate approval of the NASTA bill. Please invite everyone to join the fight. That's the reason I'm here on a Sunday, a holiday weekend, and doing this. That's why I'm writing. That's why I'm doing this, Catherine, because right now we can do something about it. Right now we can do something about it. After the bill is passed, it would have harmed your brother, your sister, your neighbor, your auntie, your daughter, and a lot of it will be irreversible. You can't reverse death. You can't reverse the financial catastrophe that will affect many. Let's just give a good example here. This is a good example here. Many people thought they were going to retire, and this is so sad. Many people thought they were going to retire with their 401ks at good numbers. And in one day, Donald Trump knew what he was doing. He talks about throwing tariffs on everything. And their portfolio crashed. Their portfolio crashed. And it wasn't, you can't say, well, they should have balanced their portfolio from bonds to stocks, etc. Because what Trump did caused not only stocks to crash, he also caused bonds to crash. So you have your portfolio here. You're ready to retire in a year or so, and it dumps. Good people, a lot of people who voted for him, and it crashed. Their retirement crashed. Policies matter. The people we elect matter. The media that we have matter. All of this matters. And we have to be the ones, I remember when Obama was running, he used to say, we are who we've been waiting for. And I took that to heart. I took that to heart. Actually, I took that to heart during the run. I started doing all this. I gave up my business for independent media. Don't know if kind of crazy to do, but for independent media, because that thing about who we've been waiting for. I knew all this. I'm an engineer. I knew all this technology stuff. I didn't need to hire anybody to do any of this kind of stuff. I could do it all on my own. I could connect the wires. I could figure things out, etc. I said, we've been who we've been waiting for. When I'm complaining about why is it this way? Why is it that way? And somebody should do something about it. I said, why not you? Right? And I am. And we are. And we should. And we should. And we should. And all of us can. Well, not all of us can. Those who have the wherewithal, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're ill or whatever, just do whatever you can. If you have a story to tell, don't forget, drop me a line at info@politicsdoneright.com. I'll tell your story. We'll get you on with your cell phone and have a little chat, that whole thing. Put it out there. Let's stop suffering in silence. Let's start working together. I'm going to be getting out of here shortly. Got to go write a few more blogs to put out there. Like I said, I got to get a few more blogs to put out there. Natalie Lago says, aren't Republicans in Congress dead set on passing this terrible bill? Not disappoint Donald Trump because they fear retaliation. Yeah, they are. But more than retaliation from Donald Trump, they fear retaliation from you. That's why Senator Johnson is so out talking about this bill right now as being a budget buster and all of that. Let's see how far he gets with that. But he'll get far if he thinks he has your support. That's how he'll get far. If he believes that he can get your support, that you're not gonna really get his butt, then we'll get the 3 senators that we need in the Senate to prevent the passage of this bill. We still have the time to do it, but you have got to engage. You can't sit back, like James Carville said, and just wait for things to happen. You have to be actively engaged. And while our media is doing a poor job, that's why myself and other independent progressive media folks are trying to do this. So before I close out, I just want to say one of the problems that we do have is, in fact, funding. And if you think that you can support what we're doing for a coffee a month, consider jumping up to our Substack and being a paid subscriber. We have thousands and thousands of subscribers, but we need a lot more actually. We need about 600 or 700 more paid subscribers to get some help and get some video assistance and all of that to keep doing this kind of job. So if you have the wherewithal to do so, please consider becoming a paid subscriber of our Substack, politicsdoneright.com. substack.com/newsletter if you're listening elsewhere. But if you're on Substack already, just go to Egberto Off the Record, Egberto Willies, and become a paid subscriber. I'm going to be writing a few more articles today that you'll see. If those of you that are subscribed, you'll get in your email, very important pieces that I'm putting out. So I'm saying again, it's all up to us, and it is something that we can get done. No fear, no panic. We just have to do our job. I want to thank you for spending this Sunday with me. I'm going to cut some of this up for my program on KPFT in the morning, just the first part of it. This other piece will be a standalone on its own, and I'll be reprocessing this and posting this in the next few minutes or so. I want to thank you for listening. Please support the program. Please go to subscribe to our newsletter. Become a paid subscriber if you have the ability to do so. Thank you so kindly. And guys, enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day. We are going to be back live tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. at KPFT 90.1 FM and Simulcast on Substack. And likewise, at 3 p.m. Central, simulcast and Substack and YouTube and everywhere else. You guys have a wonderful Sunday. I am going back to work.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.